Hello, hi, welcome to GMA Talk, your most beloved, your most awesome, your most talk show right here on YouTube and all your favorite social media platform, GMA Talk, with your host, yours truly, Gerard Mutabazi Amani. So I would like to start by saying thank you very much for subscribing, thank you for watching, thank you for liking, for commenting, for sharing. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe and stay tuned right here on GMA Talk for the development on refugees and with refugees around the world and how you can support and be called to action. So last week's video we looked at the Kenyan government's ultimatum to close two refugee camps in Kenya, the Kakuma refugee camp and the Dadaab refugee camp. So the Dadaab refugee camp is close to the border of Somalia, and the Kakuma refugee camp is all the way across the country, not far from bordering of Uganda. So if you haven't watched the video of last week, please go and watch and be informed on the situations and what the logic of the government giving the UNHCR ultimatum of 2 weeks from March 24th to come up with a plan to close the refugee camp, giving the UNHCR the ultimatum to come up with a plan to close the two refugee camps. So, and on this week, we will continue with the same topic and the same situation in Kenya, because recently on April 8th, the Kenyan court ordered a stay for the closure of the two refugee camps. So, and that stay goes for the next 30 days. And the gentleman who took the government, or rather took the decision to court to suspend the decision. His name is Peter Gichira, and is a former president aspirant, and is also a lawyer. So he took the case to court to suspend the orders offered by the government to close these two refugee camps, because the argument was it against international law, against refugee law, against what Kenya really its obligation and the duties to caring and supporting refugees, and also just offering a safe haven to those in need, especially at this during hard times and challenging times of COVID-19. So that the development currently of the situations in Kenya. So we'll see what happens with after the 30 days have been expired of the stay of close of the camps, or rather of coming up with a plan to close the camps. And as always, the UNHCR is working with government officials, working with partners to try to find the best and possible solutions when it comes to helping and supporting refugees. And one may ask, how long can it take to close a refugee camp, or what are the situations and the logistics are needed in order to close the refugee camp. So first of all, when it comes to refugee support, refugees repatriation, refugee resettlement, and refugees integration. So usually when government and UNHCR and the partners and the stakeholders look at solutions of supporting refugees, there's usually the solution of repatriation. And repatriation basically is for the refugees to be able to safely return to their homes and the countries where they come from. So for example, here in Kenya with these two refugee camps, Kakuma and Dadaab, they host Somali refugees, South Sudanese refugees, Congolese refugees, even Tanzanian refugees, Ethiopian refugees, Eritrean refugees, So basically when the decisions are being taken to close down a refugee camp or to support refugees to safely return, they look at, okay, is repatriation possible? Can refugees return safely home without their lives being threatened? And in situations like this, among these countries of which Kenya is hosting refugees from, they still really in turmoil, there's still conflicts, and people are not able to return safely. Okay, so that is one of the solutions. Repatriation is returning to your country, to your home, safe without your life being in danger. Again, from the same troubles you flee from or from new troubles. Second, it's usually looking also in terms of integration. So looking at the situations of where here in Kenya, where these two refugee camps are located, for Kakuma and Dadaab, looking at how can refugees be integrated into the society, whether in nearby communities or whether in the host community or whether across the country, refugees being integrated, being offered documentation of schooling, documentation for work, or being offered residency, or being offered path to citizenship, or being offered documents to be able to stay safely in the country without fear of deportation, without fear of running into against the law, without fear of not being to provide or seek opportunities to better their lives and that of their families. So that's usually the second choice or decision that UNHCR or government officials and partners look at in terms of, okay, how can refugees be integrated into the community, into the country? Because most of the time in these refugee camps, refugees don't have mobility freedom, they don't have documentation, and they are very limited to what they can do, to what they can seek opportunities, whether it's education, employment, socio-economic opportunities to better their life, or even an ID, to prove who they are. Sometimes it's nearly mission impossible, when it comes to documentation. And also looking at integration means, especially in these contents here in Kenya, with the government wanting to order refugees already back to the countries, or rather close the refugee camps, since previous years, so how can refugees be integrated into the country, or how can that solutions work for the refugees, for the government, for the Kenyans, and for the partners involved? So that is integration. And then the third one usually is a resettlement. So this involves, taking refugees, to another country. It can be taking refugees from Kenya to Tanzania, taking refugees from Kenya to Rwanda, taking refugees from Kenya to Australia, taking refugees from Kenya to UK, from Kenya to Canada. So this is what repatriation means. So where refugees, sorry, not repatriation, but this is what resettlement means. So where refugees are offered the chance, for safety, for a life-changing opportunity, for refuge in a third country, which is resettlement. They are resettled into a third country. So these are the three solutions which involve supporting and helping refugees. So is repatriation, going back to their countries safely if it can be done, integration with a will, and working together with the government, local authorities, organizations, and the citizens to integrate successfully refugees. And the third one, resettlement, settling refugees to third country. So in these situations where the Kenyan government is ordering the refugees camps to be closed, so there is only about two among those three solutions. Possibility is repatriation and or resettlement. But with conflicts ongoing among many of these countries where the refugees come from, that is nearly impossible. And the third one is, how feasible it is, to resettle or to transfer or to move over 410,000 refugees among or within these two refugee camps. So, as the former aspiring president and a lawyer, Peter Gichira, as he has rightfully stated, so Kenya has international obligation. Kenya has responsibility to care and support refugees. And we have to also realize and to rightfully point, so these refugees didn't come haven't been in this country without the will of the government or without the hospitality of the Kenyans. So when a refugee camp is opened in a country, that country works together with UNHCR and other humanitarian organizations to establish the refugee camp and to care for refugee camps. So there is the agreement and the partnership to support and care for those who are fleeing for their lives, to offer them safety and shelter and opportunities to better their life. So if this refugee camp were established or have been there for decades as a result of the hospitality of the Kenyan government and Kenyan peoples, and in order to find a solution, in order to work toward a solution, the Kenyan government need not to give UNHCR, the United Nations Refugees Organizations, need not to give them ultimatum to say, okay, within 2 weeks, come with a plan to close this refugees camp, and there is no negotiation, there is nothing that else can be done. So this is not the way how things work and not the way how things should work. Indeed, it's well understood, yeah, refugees have to be welcomed by the government, they have to be welcomed by local authority, they have to be welcomed by citizens, because how can you be somewhere where you are not wanted, where you are not welcomed, right? So we understand that the Kenyan government has a right, and indeed some of these, whether it's security concerns or, some of these, they are understandable, but, how can everybody and all the decisions be taken with the interests of refugees, Kenyans, and the government itself and the partners who are there to support refugees? So if Kenyan government is in the long run to close these two refugee camps, they need to work with UNHCR, IOM, and many other humanitarian organizations which are working in Kenya in the refugee camps, and working also with foreign partners and other countries to see how refugees other can be resettled, and whether others can be integrated into the country, or whether others, if it's possible, to repatriate it into the countries. So indeed, it is possible to close a refugee camp. It's possible for a country to not have a refugee camp, but in order to get there, there have to be steps taken, there have to be a process taken, and there have to be a strong partnership and a strong will that need to be implemented and put into place in order for refugees camps to be closed, and in order for people and citizens to feel that indeed their views and their saying are taken into account, and at the same time that, in order for the refugees to be protected. So that's what needs to be done in this case. So we'll see what happens as the 30 days of the refugee camp stay closed, in the next 30 days of the decision of the Kenyan court of staying the decision to close this refugee camp. And after the 30 days, or within the 30 days, we'll see if any decision will be taken by the Kenyan court to suspend definitely the decision or the ultimatum of the government, or which solutions will come about. So with that, stay tuned here on GMA Talk, with the continuous and ongoing development of this Kenya ultimatum, the government of Kenya ultimatum to close the refugee camps of Dadaab and Kakuma, and the recent decisions of the Kenyan court to suspend the order for 30 days, to stay the order for the next 30 days, and to see what happens. So stay tuned right here for ongoing update of the situation in Kenya, and next time we'll look at what is happening in Myanmar with Rohingya refugees, and in the neighboring countries. There's been cases of fire in the camps, fire in the resettlement, and we'll also look at the situation in Mozambique, the insecurity, and refugees continuously fleeing for their lives. So, right here on GMA Talk with yours truly, your host, Gerard Mutabazi Amani. Love, peace, and unity. Cheers.